Hi everyone, I'm Eve and thank you so much for joining me for today's class. Today we will be doing a short standing flow with a little bit of emphasis on the feet and the ankles. Please practice in a safe and clear space, and if you need a little bit of added stability, try to find something sturdy like the wall to hang on to. We will start today's practice in an easy stance, whatever that looks like for you, and I'll give you a few moments to find yourself onto your mat. Once you've come to your mat, I invite you to begin to practice finding the pattern of your breath. Know that at this time, there's no need to try and change your breathing. And since we're standing, we might have a little bit of weight shifting that happens in our body as well. We'll take about 3 more rounds of breath. When you're ready, I invite you to begin to draw your attention back to your body, let go of your breath, and allow some gentle movement to come in. And this might just look like shifting your weight from foot to foot. Perhaps you shift your weight slightly forward and back. It's okay if you have a creaky floorboard like me. And when you're ready, come back towards stillness. We're going to move into some hip circles. I personally like to bring my hands to my hips, and we're going to start with some exaggerated hip circles. So feet can either be together or they can be a little bit further apart. The wider our stance to a certain point, the more stability that we tend to have versus feet closer together. When you're ready, weight is going to begin to shift towards one side. Then perhaps we send our sit bones behind us. Hips shift to the opposite side. Then we might send the hips in front of us. Continue at your pace. On your next inhale, reverse your direction. When you're ready, come back towards center and find stillness. Feel free to pedal out the feet slightly to reset or walk the feet out. From here, we're going to come into some standing cat and cow. For standing cat and cow, feel free to either leave your arms at your sides, otherwise feel free to bring them into your movement. For cow pose, we'll inhale, begin to broaden the chest. I like to draw my hands out to their sides. Then on your exhale for cat pose, begin to round the spine. I like to draw my hands out in front of me. Inhale for cow pose, broaden the chest, maybe look up towards the sky. And exhale, begin to make your way back to cat pose. Continue at your pace. One more round of breath. When you're ready, come back towards mountain pose. Mountain pose is about feet hips width apart, palms turn to face forward, lift up through the crown of your head. We'll take one more round of breath here. When you're ready, we'll begin to make our way back into our hip circles. This time we'll practice finding much smaller circles. So again, hands can come to your waist or to your pelvis. And I want you to bring your attention to this space because we're practicing on bringing our movement just to the pelvis rather than drawing the energy up into the upper body or down into the lower body. When you're ready, weight begins to shift towards one side, or we're sending the side of our hips out to their side. Then tailbone tucks forward, weight shifts to the opposite side, then tailbone untucks. So again, it's these really micro circles that we're practicing almost as though we're trying to draw circles on the floor with our sit bones. When you're ready, reverse your direction. One more breath. When you're ready, come back towards stillness and we'll come into some feet pedaling. Feel free to take a few steps to reset before we move into our feet pedaling. For our feet pedaling, arms can go where you like them. I'm going to personally hold on to my closet door here or just rest my hand here for some added support. When you're ready, one heel lifts, then your heel comes back down to the floor. Opposite heel lifts, and then foot comes back down to the floor. Just like with our mountain pose or our hip circles, we might play around with how wide our stance is, whether we like our feet closer together or more towards hips width apart. We'll take 2 more rounds of breath. When you're ready, come back towards stillness, and we'll begin to make our way into our first short warrior of class. And for today, we'll start with the right hand side. So right foot pushes the floor away, left foot takes a short step behind you. And for today, we'll practice having arms at heart center. I invite you to ground down through both of your feet as you lift up through the crown of your head. We're practicing squaring the torso forward. One more round of breath. When you're ready, step forward, find mountain pose. Feel free to walk it out. And we'll begin to switch to our left hand side. This time, our left foot pushes the floor away, right foot takes a short step behind you. Just like before, hands will come to heart center. Practice lifting up through the crown of your head. Send your sit bones down towards the floor and keep a micro bend in your knees. Take 2 more rounds of breath. When you're ready, step forward, find mountain pose. Feel free to pedal out the feet once more. Sometimes I like to move my arms as well. And we'll come back to our mountain pose, finding stillness. This time I invite you to practice drawing your attention all the way down to all 4 corners of your feet. I know that might sound a little bit silly, but we can imagine that there's 2 corners that are close together in our heels, and then we have a corner that's in the ball of our foot, and a corner that's on the pinky side edge underneath the toes towards the front of our foot. I invite you to practice grounding down through all 4 of those points. Sometimes I like to think of my feet like a triangle, if that's a better visualization for you. Now you're welcome to stay here. Otherwise, if you'd like to practice lifting your toes up off the floor and then setting them back down, feel free to. Arms can go where you like them. I like to have mine rest at my sides. Keep a micro bend in your knees. And I invite you to notice how lifting the toes up off the floor changes the engagement in your legs. We'll take 1 more round of breath. When you're ready, come back towards stillness. Feel free to pedal the feet back out, and we'll begin to make our way back into our short warrior 1 stance. We'll come back to the right hand side. Right foot pushes the floor away. Left foot takes a short step behind you. Arms return back towards heart center. When hands are at heart center, practice relaxing the shoulders away from your ears. Microbend in both of your knees. And I invite you to practice that same engagement we just did in our mountain pose in your short warrior one stance. Now, we might not lift the toes as high as we did in our mountain pose, but we might play around with pushing all four corners or 3 points of our feet down into the floor. Take 2 more rounds of breath. When you're ready, come back towards stillness, and on your next exhale, step forward, find mountain pose. Feel free to pedal the feet out once more, and we'll begin to switch back to the left-hand side. This time, left foot pushes down into the floor, right foot takes a short step behind you, hands can return to heart center. Perhaps we practice pressing the palms together just slightly. When you're ready, practice grounding back down through all four corners of your feet or 3 points. Again, we might find our toes lift up off the floor, or we're working to get there. Keep a microbend in your knees and practice finding engagement in your core. This might look like imagining that there's an elevator at the base of your pelvis and you're pulling the elevator all the way up towards your belly button. We'll take 1 more round of breath. When you're ready, come back towards stillness, and on your exhale, step forward, find mountain pose, and we'll begin to move back into our feet pedaling. You're always welcome to hang on to something sturdy. When you're ready, one heel lifts, comes back down, and then we'll switch to the opposite side. Continue at your pace. One more round of breath. When you're ready, come back towards stillness, and we'll make our way back into our hip circles. The choice is yours whether you'd like to take large hip circles or small ones. And when you're ready, begin to shift your hips towards one side, draw the pelvis forward, then to the opposite side, sit bones go behind you. And remember, these might be large circles that are exaggerated, or we might practice keeping our movement centered in our pelvis. When you are ready, reverse your direction. Take 1 more round of breath. When you're ready, come back towards stillness. Feel free to take a few steps to reset. From here, we'll move into a little bit more of a traditional balancing stance. So again, you're welcome to hang on to something sturdy, and we'll start by grounding down into the right hand side. This time, left foot takes a short step forward, and if you'd like, our foot might come to hover off the floor, or we can keep our toes grounded on the mat. When you're ready, we're going to practice lifting the foot up off the floor and flexing the foot. So it's almost as though we're trying to pull the tops of our feet towards our shins, and then return towards flexing the toes. And continue at your pace. Remember to keep a microbend in both knees. One more breath. When you're ready, both feet return back to the floor to meet each other. Feel free to take a few steps to reset. And we'll begin to switch to our opposite side. This time, left foot pushes the floor away, right foot takes a short step forward. Same idea, we might practice lifting the heel up off the floor or floating the foot above the floor. And then we'll practice flexing the foot. This is kind of the same idea when we kick a door shut. We're trying to have our foot flat, and then return towards pointing the toes. We'll take 2 more rounds of breath. When you're ready, both feet come back down. Feel free to walk it out. And we'll make our way back into our hip circles. Hands can return back to the pelvis. And this time I invite you to find the opposite one of what you did earlier. So I took a more exaggerated one, so I'll return back to my micro pelvis movements. When you're ready, hips move to one side, perhaps tailbone tucks forward, hips move to the other side, then tailbone untucks. On your next inhale, reverse your direction. Last breath. When you're ready, come back towards stillness. Feel free to take a few steps to reset. And we'll begin to make our way back into our easy stance. If you prefer to come down into an easy seat, whether that's on a chair or on the floor, feel free to go there now. And I invite you to come back to the rhythm of your breath. If you're standing, know that it's okay to shift your weight around ever so slightly. Or if you're seated, know that you're welcome to adjust your seat. We'll take about 3 more rounds of breath. You're welcome to stay here in this resting position if you'd like to. Otherwise, if you'd like to join me for 3 final breaths together, we'll start by first bringing some movement back to the body, wiggling the fingers and the toes. Perhaps movement comes into the wrists and the ankles. And eventually making our way into some large body movements. That might mean a full body stretch. Perhaps it's leaning towards one side. And I invite you to take the next few moments to reflect on your practice from today. As always, there are no right or wrong observations, only things that we can reflect on. Take about 2 more rounds of breath. If you'd like to join me for 3 final breaths together, we'll stand up or sit up just a little bit taller. Hands might come out to your sides. Let everything go. And when you're ready, inhale, rise up, reach up. Exhale, arms come back down. Inhale to reach up. Exhale, back down. Last round of breath. And let everything go. Thank you so much for practicing with me today, and I hope to see you next time.